From vomiting vengeance to dog poop deliveries, here are some more extreme stories of revenge that went way too far. I'm sure we've all done things we regret in the name of love. For Redditor Furalicious, it was leaving her hometown to move to a place that smelled of cow farts with her then-boyfriend. See, being young and in love, she readily abandoned her entire life in San Diego to be with the guy, who we'll call Glarb, without thinking about whether it was really a good idea, or not, mind you. So imagine her reaction a few months later when she discovered her man was having an affair with his boss. Heartbroken, she confronted the scumbag, and after a long and exhausting discussion, she agreed to stay and try to work things out.
I'll give him a week.
I'll give him 11 minutes.
Of course, she quickly discovered that Glarb was still cheating on her. Unfortunately, she couldn't immediately get the heck out of there. When your lives get intertwined, it takes some time to uncouple them. So she kept her knowledge of his continued infidelity a secret and feigned a genuine attempt to reconcile. But in reality, she was planning her exit. She continued with her daily duties, most importantly making Glarb's lunch, only now he was going to get some extra special grub. The man loved luscious chili, adored it, so she added a bonus ingredient for him: dog food. What? And guess what? Glarb was so impressed with the dog food chili, he even called her from work to praise her food. I bet it was hardly the reaction she was expecting, but she rolled with it. If he wanted more, she'd give him more. For the rest of the week, she spiked his lunch with pet chow, and he continued to frickin' love it, the freak. On the fifth day, Glarb's cousin Flarb was over while Licious prepared his lunch. On autopilot, she chatted away while casually shoving the forbidden ingredient into his chili. Well, naturally, the cousin noticed, and Licious had no choice but to come clean. And Flarb loved it. She even agreed to help make the putrid revenge meal. Flarb would wind up spilling the beans to the guy eventually, but he only ever thought it was the one time. I wonder if he ever found out how much dog food he'd eaten. When people think of their favorite holidays, they often think of Christmas or Halloween. Never Easter. Nobody seems to like Easter, and speaking of which, my fan Josh wrote in to tell me about his Easter revenge story. In 2008, over in the UK, Josh was prepping for the holiday and copious amounts of chocolate it would bring. Every year, he'd get a Cadbury's cream egg, a chocolate egg filled with gooey nougat.
The only word for it is...
But there was a catch. Every year, his older brother would steal his egg. As he was the oldest, he felt like he had a right to take whatever treats he wanted from our hero every damn year. But not this one. See, Josh came up with a plan for payback. A week before the big day, he went out to the store and picked up a pack of goodies. And when he got home, he hid them in the freezer. Fast forward to Easter itself, and Josh's brother slept in as expected. Showtime. Our guy ran out to the store and grabbed a new cream egg before returning home and taking out the frozen ones. He placed them in the microwave, leaving them in just long enough for the outer shell to thaw. The inside, though, well, that was still frozen solid. He placed the box seductively on the table next to him and sat down, waiting for his bro to wake up. When he heard him coming down the stairs, he opened up his brand new egg and chowed down. His big brother waltzed in, saw Josh eating an egg, and wanted one for himself. "Yoink!" he exclaimed as he stole one from the pack on the table. And with a smug look on his face, he shoved the whole egg in his mouth and chomped. A distinct, loud, crunching noise filled the air before he squealed in pain. In shock, his bro spat out 5 teeth and his fillings with them. The old frozen Choco trick. Nicely done, Josh. If you have any revenge stories of your own, let me know. Shoot me an email at revenge@beamazed.com, and you could end up featured in a video yourself. Speaking of, it's time for yet another tale of vengeance from a fan. Let's call him Greg. Now, Greg had a problem with a bully in the 7th grade. The bully, Sean, made a habit of randomly beating other kids up. And heck, one of his assaults on Greg left him with a concussion. One of Sean's other victims was a kid named Nico, and he'd had enough of his crap. He came to school that day with a backpack looking a little heavier than usual. And Sean made a beeline for Nico as Greg watched on in horror, expecting to see the poor kid get beaten to a pulp. But not today. Sean launched a punch at Nico, who simply held his backpack up in front of his fist. And suddenly, the thug's whiny screams filled the air, echoing through the hallways. Turns out, Nico had anticipated the attack and filled his bag with thumbtacks, the kind you stick on those cork boards. The tacks pierced the bully's hand, causing him to bleed all over the place. Ouch. Apparently, he even wound up with an infection from the wound. Bada boom. I love it when a bully feels the cold, unflinching smack of payback. Now, despite Nico's classmates celebrating his actions, rejoicing that someone finally stood up to their bully, he was unfortunately expelled by the school. But on his final day, he walked out of the building, and Greg and the other kids cheered for their fallen hero. Man, what a guy. It's hardly uncommon to have a bit of trouble with the in-laws, but this tale from Redditor ScaredyCat takes the cake. See, her husband passed away in an accident in 2024, leaving her to care for their 2 daughters. That said, Scaredy wasn't too broken up about it. He was a serial cheater that had 2 other kids with his affair partner, far from a model husband and father. Unfortunately, her ex's parents were still in the picture. Pillars of the local community and model members of the church congregation, they seemed to be great people. But in reality, they were selfish, entitled. See, the 2 sons he had with that floozy were now orphaned and were sent to live with a distant relative. The in-laws blamed Scaredy and her daughters for their non-existent relationship with their grandsons for some reason. So the slimy couple began spreading nasty rumors about the family among the community and ultimately confronted one of Scaredy's daughters at a local market. The in-laws and a group of churchgoers surrounded and berated her. They called her a bad sister for not looking after her dad's affair kids and unchristian for not wanting to spend time with her grandparents. Naturally, Scaredy jumped in and defended her child, and the awful old bats began abusing her as well. Incredibly, they claimed she was worse, as she refused to obey her in-laws like a good Christian wife. Ultimately, the resulting screaming match got so bad, they were all asked to leave the market, and Scaredy rushed her kids to the car and left. But as I'm sure you guessed, that was hardly the end of it. The grotesque grandparents took to the Facebook group of the local church, spreading lies and bad-mouthing Scaredy and her girls. They moaned and cried about how supposedly awful they were to them, making wild claims that they were trying to make them homeless and penniless. And yes, they reiterated the lie that they were the reason they lost contact with their grandsons. But what the couple failed to mention was the true origin of said grandsons, instead claiming that the floozy was a surrogate that Scaredy and her ex used. Why? Well, the church had a zero-tolerance policy on infidelity, and the truth would shatter the image of the grandparents and their departed cheating son. Well, enough was enough. Scaredy was through putting up with the pair's insane vitriol. As she and her ex were going through a messy divorce when he passed, she had all the receipts she needed to prove his betrayals. Photos, texts, emails, you name it, and she had it. And not just evidence to incriminate her ex, messages from her evil in-laws too. Yeah, that's right. She had proof of their vile behavior on top of all of it.
Finally, inner peace.
It was go time. So, Scaredy was off to a print shop to make copies of everything. Photos of him cheating, texts admitting it, messages from the in-laws acknowledging his infidelity, the whole 9 yards. Hell, she even printed copies of texts the ingrate in-laws sent to her daughters, calling them back and blaming their father's demise on them days after he passed. Pay dirt. After paying extra to get this stuff printed on beautiful high-quality stock, she took her haul home and started to work on personalized binders, designed to resemble church songbooks. They were actually, in fact, truth bombs that were set to destroy some lives. Scaredy headed to church, stuck them in the other prayer books, and dipped, waiting for the fallout. And it didn't take long for the backlash to begin. The church congregation was livid with the duo, incensed with their abusive behavior, lies, and concealment of their son's affair. In the end, they were shamed into leaving the church outright, completely alienated by their community. Couldn't have happened to a nicer pair of vile old. There are few things that get me as heated as people that let their dogs crap all over the place. Pick up the poop, moron. That's part of the deal. But some jerkwads don't think so. YouTuber Camp Kyle YT had to deal with one such jerkwad back in November of 2025. See, a neighbor had routinely been allowing their dog to dookie all over Kyle's property. When he confronted them about it, they supposedly claimed, "It's natural," and dismissed him. Kyle was not happy. How dare his neighbor act like such a scumbag? So, Kyle decided that he wasn't going to put up with it anymore. That poop should never have been on his property. In fact, he decided to return it.
I almost kind of feel bad about this one. We got a couple weeks worth of plops. Rain-soaked, super mushy.
Here I come. Oh, here I come.
Oh, Martha!
Impeccable. Hope they loved cleaning sloppy dog doo off their nice, clean car. You know what they say, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Well, just ask Ohio resident Tia McCreary. Back in February 2024, she walked into a local car dealership, Taylor Kia of Lima, and bought herself a vehicle. The finance manager of the store arranged a loan with Global Lending Services, which allowed Tia to leave the lot in her brand new ride that same day. All's well that ends well, huh?
Right? Wrong!
Well, it turns out Global Lending Services, or GLS, later decided, hey, actually, nah. They concluded that after already preliminarily approving the loan, they ultimately didn't have enough info to do so. So, a month later, Taylor Kia sneakily repossessed the car while Tia was at work. Obviously outraged, she immediately began looking into her legal options and discovered something juicy. Taylor Kia of Lima had the registration of their name canceled by the Ohio Secretary of State after the company failed to renew it. Probably wearing a Grinch-like smirk, she hatched a devilishly devious scheme. She registered Taylor Kia of Lima in her own name. Now officially owning it, she sent a cease and desist to the business. Basically, they had to stop using the name or they'd be in trouble. Incredible. And after that, in June, she filed a complaint against the business, claiming it violated the Consumer Sales Practice Act, as well as alleging fraud, among other offenses. The legal case did legal things and plodded along and flopped back and forth with little progress, though, near as I can tell, she still owns the name Taylor Kia of Lima. But hey, it's only a name, guys. But it seems like car dealerships have a knack for ticking people off. In December of 2024, Michael Murray waltzed into a Mazda dealership in Sandy, Utah, and bought himself a car. Driving his brand new Subaru off the lot, Michael was in a great mood. That was until a few hours later, when he discovered what he believed to be mechanical issues with his new ride. Uh-oh. Enraged, he called the dealership and demanded they refund him. They refused, claiming all sales were final. They wouldn't take the car back, and they wouldn't give Michael his money. Infuriated at what he believed to be a shady business practice, he threatened to ram the car into the building if the staff didn't accept his return. No dice. Now, Michael didn't really mean what he said, surely. Well, a lot of people say things they don't really mean when they're mad. He cooled off, went home, and started to research his available options with the car. Nah, of course he drove the car into the building. Michael got his revenge all right, but he was swiftly apprehended by the cops.
You crazy son of a... You did.
The craziest part? The dealership claimed that it did offer the guy his money back or a different car, but he ignored the offer. And what's more, they're adamant that they told Michael the car he bought needed work before he paid. So it seems Michael was the one in the wrong after all. Although nobody was hurt in the crash, the dastardly driver cost an estimated $10,000 in damages, and he was indicted on felony property damage charges. Jeez. I can't help but feel like all this could have been avoided if he just had a Snickers. I'm sure we've all had at least one coworker we couldn't stand, right? Someone who made every day a nightmare. Well, my fan Gabby emailed me to tell her tale of a caustic colleague and her powerful payback. See, she worked with a dude who fancied himself the boss, despite being on equal footing to everybody else. Let's call him Melvin. He was a dirty and rude, with some absolutely revolting habits. Now, how revolting, you ask? Well, he would make little masses of snot in the office and drop them on Gabby's mousepad. He'd collect balls of dandruff on his desk. The guy would even eat earwax. But being a grotesque goblin man was only half the issue. He was a horrid person. The dude would constantly spew rude comments to coworkers, give terrible advice with misplaced certainty, and just seemed to get off on being despicable to everybody. What a jerk. But when Gabby saw a colleague leave the office to cry after getting an earful from Melvin, she snapped. The office had put up with his crap for long enough. But what to do? How best to make him suffer? Well, Gabby was undergoing mesotherapy, a form of alternative medicine involving injecting vitamins, hormones, and the like. This was something she was advised to do on an empty stomach, so she always carried laxatives with her. Well, Melvin had a strange affection for cold coffee. He'd often leave his cup of joe to cool for hours on his desk. So a few days later, when Melvin and some colleagues had stepped out for a meeting, Gabby snuck over and dropped a laxative pill in his coffee. The games were about to begin. He came back, chugged his drink, made a new one, then left it to cool as he went to lunch. Seeing another golden opportunity, Gabby chucked a second laxative in the mug. When he returned, he finished the second mug of coffee and got back to work for all of, 5 minutes. Then a tremendous rumble emerged from Melvin's stomach. And if Gabby heard it, I bet the rest of the office did too. Visibly uncomfortable, the guy broke out into a cold sweat, fidgeting a bit before running off to the bathroom. And when he finally did emerge from the stall, he announced that he was sick and heading home. Well, hope he didn't have a long drive ahead. He might not have made it back in time. But that wasn't all. See, everybody that Melvin had been mistreating complained to management. The sheer number of reports they received must have been totally overwhelming. So when they looked at all the complaints alongside some seriously poor work and botched high-profile projects, Melvin was shown the door. Couldn't have happened to a more deserving loser. Now don't forget, if you want to share your story of revenge like Gabby, email me at revenge@beamazed.com for your chance to be featured like our next story from Paula. Paula was having real problems with a bully named Bob. I'd just like to read word for word how Paula opened her email to me. His taunts and pranks were a daily occurrence, wearing down my patience and self-esteem. But the day he took it too far was when he lit my house on fire. Yes, this bully jumped straight from pranks to arson. Supposedly, the inferno destroyed the home and everything inside it. As her house was consumed by flames, her soul was consumed by revenge. She vowed to get her own back, and she knew she needed to hit Bob where it hurt. His family. No. She wasn't planning on eliminating them. No, just their reputations. But see, Bob's parents, Jack and Jessica, were respected and admired in the local community, and Paula knew that needed to change. She started by planting a seed of doubt in Jessica's mind. Was Jack having an affair? Paula sent anonymous tips to Jessica, claiming to have evidence of the infidelity. That evidence was faked, of course, doctored emails and texts between Jack and his supposed mistress, but it worked. Jessica became a paranoid shell, liable to snap at any moment. And the final nail in the coffin came when Paula staged a romantic rendezvous between Jack and said woman. Now it seems that she just snapped photos and videos of Jack with a female friend and took them out of context. But with his wife's suspicions already at an all-time high, it was enough. Jessica filed for divorce, believing adamantly that Jack was a no-good, dirty cheat. And so Jack was forced out of the house and disappeared. The apparent betrayal had left Jessica a bitter mess that cared only for herself, and consequently she abandoned Bob shortly after, leaving to parts unknown to look out for number one. Holy cow. So, if somebody burns your house to the ground, just remember that making them an orphan is a viable revenge route. This next tale is an anonymous submission to Slate's Agony Aunt Prudence asking for help. See, a mom, who we'll call Linda, wrote in to get some advice on her predicament. Back in high school, she was a stereotypical bully. She made the lives of other kids hell, in particular, a girl who we'll call Wendy. Now, whatever Linda did to her, it left a mark, a deep, deep mark. Well, fast forward to the present, and Linda had just enrolled her 2 sons into a new exclusive private school. At a parent event for said school, she bumped into another mom who seemed to instantly recognize her. It was Wendy. "Remember me?" she asked, and I bet Linda's heart sank. Well, after that day, the other moms slowly started to distance themselves from her, and her sons were routinely excluded at school. They'd often come home in tears, telling their mom that they'd not been allowed to join games at recess. And the reason might already be apparent to you. The other kids had been warned to stay away from Linda and her children. Wendy had destroyed their reputations as revenge for the bullying she received as a child. Desperate, Linda arranged a meeting with Wendy where she profusely apologized for her past behavior. She was young and stupid, and we all acted badly when we were kids, right? Well, Wendy didn't care much for her apology, only pointing out that she had to undergo therapy after what Linda had put her through. And that was that. I have no idea how things worked out in the end, but I gotta say, it's definitely extreme to make Linda's kids suffer for their mom's misdeeds. What do you think? Was Wendy justified, or was she acting like a nutcase? Let me know what you think down below. Divorce is messy. There's no way around it. But what if the couple's belongings aren't divided equally? Well, let's ask MK, the fan who emailed in. He told me the tale of a Swedish couple going through an incredibly bitter divorce. As part of the settlement, the wife was awarded the house, and the husband was forced out. Enraged at the loss of both his marriage and his home, the husband swore revenge. Before leaving, the guy tiptoed around the house, hiding rotten fish everywhere. Small pieces of disgusting seafood were expertly concealed all over the place, under the floorboards, behind walls, electrical outlets, inside curtain rods, vents, light fixtures, you name it, and this guy shoved some stanky fish in it. His unholy work finally completed, he left his keys behind and abandoned his former home. Within days, the whole house was filled with a wretched, fishy stench. It was as if Satan himself had dropped a dookie in an aquarium. The ex-wife did her best to remove the stink, deep cleaning everything, replacing appliances. Nothing worked. The woman hired professional cleaners, got pest control in to look for the culprit, and even had the place inspected for mold. Nothing. Man, I'm surprised she didn't call an exorcist too. Eventually, she had had enough of her nostrils burning every time she came home from work and put the house up for sale. But obviously, given the criminal aroma that filled every corner of the building, nobody wanted to buy the place. So with no other option, she lowered the price significantly, finally selling it at a huge loss. Well, guess who bought the house? That's right, her ex-husband. He moved back into his home, removed all the hidden fish, and cleaned up. The smell was gone, and he was back in the home he'd lost in the divorce. All's well that ends well, though I can't help but think that there'd probably be a little fish smell left over. Who knows, maybe it's a nostalgic stink that reminds him of his greatest achievement. Now, we all know bullies are secretly cowards, right? They can dish it out, sure, but they can't take a dose of their own medicine. If we need any more evidence, we can look at Sarah's payback story. See, she had problems with her own bullies during her childhood in Jamaica. Being a short tomboy, she was considered an easy target by the boys in her class. They called her all sorts of things, specifically names like lesbian, leprechaun, and Smeagol? I'm gonna assume she meant Smeagol from Lord of the Rings. Anywho, Sarah overheard a group of her bullies boasting about how brave they were. They were adamant that they weren't afraid of anything. No ghosts, no rats, and definitely not snakes. No, of course. Well, she knew all this was bravado. They were a bunch of spineless runts. And the moment she could prove it, she would. Well, a few days later, she was helping her stepdad dig a house foundation when a swarm of harmless snakes emerged from the dirt. Oh man, it was too good to be true. She grabbed one of the scaly fellas, popped him in a jar, and he had some work to do. Monday morning rolled around and she headed off to school, with her new pal tucked safely in her backpack. When she arrived, she sat at her desk and waited for the inevitable. And sure enough, the group of bullies waltzed in and immediately surrounded her, barraging her with abuse. Go time. Calmly, she opened her bag, removed the jar, took off the lid, released the snake at their feet. All hell broke loose. The scumbags immediately leapt into the air screaming. Desks and chairs were flung across the room as tears fell down their faces. Hell, the whole classroom erupted into chaos. And Sarah? Well, after she felt that her tormentors had suffered enough, she calmly picked up the serpent and mocked the losers for crying like babies. Then she threw the snake out the window and sat back at her desk with a smirk. Strangely enough, those kids didn't bother her anymore. I can't imagine why. Back in 2021, many members of Redditor Suspicious Trash's family moved 10 hours to the small town she lived in with her partner and kids. Among the new arrivals were her mother-in-law, sister-in-law, brother-in-law Brad, and his then-girlfriend Bonnie, alongside her child from a previous relationship. Within a week of their arrival, a big family dinner was held, where Brad would be introducing Bonnie for the first time. Now, Brad was a notorious womanizer. He had a new girlfriend seemingly every month, so nobody much cared about making an effort with Bonnie. So Bonnie hid away in the corner, ignoring the family and being largely ignored by them. When she and Brad left, they were convinced that the rest of the family hated her and that it was Trash's fault.
You what?
That's right, these absolute lunatics immediately blamed her for literally no reason at all. The pair opted to largely avoid the family after that. And fast forward a year later, the on-again, off-again couple found that they were pregnant. Avoiding all pregnancy care in order to save money, Child Protection came calling after the doctor identified Bonnie as high risk. She smoked, she drank, she took drugs, she was overweight. Understandable, right? Well, wrong. Because Brad and Bonnie decided that this was Trash's fault, too. In their mind, it was her that called CPS on them. So what did they do? They called CPS on her. Real mature. Well, then in 2023, they got evicted from their rental property. Yep, Trash again, of course. And when the baby was born, Bonnie got so overwhelmed caring for 2 children that CPS were called again. You got it, they blamed Trash for that too. At this point, the paranoid pair were totally convinced that Trash was out to get them, and that she was sabotaging their entire life. In retaliation, they started spreading rumors around town about her, while regularly calling the police to her home, claiming she was growing drugs or hurting her family. On top of that, they contacted her boss and lied about her abusing her own children, leading to Trash getting suspended. That was the last straw. Too much crap had been flung her way for too long. And Trash was about to take out the, well, you get the idea. So, what devious plan did she come up with? What was the most irritating form of payback she could devise? Well, using her partner's Facebook account, she spied on their profiles and discovered that they were prolific users of the marketplace. They listed old junk all the time, and this would be the key to her revenge. Looking over the current listings, she put together multiple posters for each of them, listing them all as totally free and available for pickup at their address. Then she posted them inside the local church, on bulletin boards, and even in other towns nearby. 7 of them in total. Her good work completed, Trash sat back and waited for the fireworks. And she didn't wait long. She soon started to hear about the horrid ordeal that Brad and Bonnie were undergoing. Strangers knocking on their door multiple times a day demanding the freebies they were promised. There was no escape. They kept on coming day in and day out. Brad became suspicious of Bonnie, assuming that she had given out their address, and Bonnie thought the same about him. Every time they posted something else on Facebook Marketplace, Trash would make another poster and put it up all in the same places, causing the cycle to start all over again. She trapped them in a world without peace, one that turned them against each other. Hell, in the end, the duo came to the conclusion that they'd have to move away again to escape. Incredible. They'd better hope that Trash doesn't find out their new address as well. I hope that none of you out there have ever experienced the pain of being cheated on. It's utterly devastating. And some people handle it with tears, others with retribution. Take my fan, David. So old David lived with his fiancée, Sophia, and he was blissfully happy. It seemed that nothing could spoil his perfect little life until a bomb was dropped on it. One of David's best buds revealed to him that Sophia had been cheating on him with his own brother, Camilo, who was married himself. Jeez, what a piece of work. And with their wedding day just around the corner, he decided to bide his time while making preparations in the background. The big day finally rolled around and David made breakfast for his wife-to-be and brother. And now that he knew his wife was allergic to garlic, so he shoved a load in her breakfast Sammy. Sure enough, her skin broke out in horrid pimples and a rash before she stepped in front of all her friends and family. And his brother was allergic to chili, so our guy gave him a bag of chips laced with chili powder. Cue rash and vomiting. I mean, it's pretty good payback, I suppose, but I expected a little more given… Oh, wait, no, hold up. I've just been informed that the true revenge is still to come. Remember those preparations of his that I just mentioned? Well, they were about to pay off. The day went on, and the time finally came for the couple to be stood at the altar. The priest asked if Sophia took David, and she said yes. But when the time came and the question was directed to him, he flatly said no. As the room filled with gasps, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a slew of papers, all with evidence of her cheating. I can only imagine the look on Sophia's face. I bet it looked like a Renaissance painting. The wedding was well and truly off, and Sophia was kicked out of David's house. Camilo was chucked out by his own wife and forced to move back in with his parents. Priceless. Hey, maybe after the two of them could go live in a dumpster together. That's where the trash belongs, after all. Some people hit their bullies, others humiliate them. My friend Jaden had a unique method to deal with his school bully. For a month straight, a classmate at his college named Brody would attack him. Each day, the lug would shove or trip him, sending him hurling towards the ground. How he put up with that for a whole month is beyond me, but ultimately, even the saintliest among us snap, and he'd had enough. On his journey to discover the jerk's Achilles heel, he learned something surprising. Brody was on a search for his soulmate, for Miss Right. The lonely loser spent countless hours on dating apps but never found a match. Well, gee, I wonder why. But Jaden was struck with inspiration. He knew exactly how to make his bully pay. He set up a fake profile on one of the apps, pretending to be a gorgeous single woman with a weakness for Neanderthals with room temperature IQs. Brody couldn't believe his luck when he matched with her, and before he knew it, he was head over heels. He knew that he had to meet her, and so a date was planned. A romantic rendezvous at the park. The day came around, and Brody anxiously waited for his love to arrive, but he was in for a shock. Jaden emerged from the shadows and approached him, a smirk on his face. Confused, the bully asked what he was doing there, and Jaden responded that his woman wasn't coming, and moreover, she didn't exist. Nobody loved him, nobody would ever love him, because nobody likes a bully. And with that mic drop moment, Jaden swaggered away and left Brody stewing in his misery. Chef's kiss. I'll admit I was half expecting him to show up disguised as the woman, but I'm still impressed. A fan named Jamar wrote in to tell me about some high school bullying he'd suffered. His supposed best friend and their brother would routinely pick on Jamar for basically any reason they could think of. Man, doesn't sound like much of a friend to me, let alone your bestie. Anywho, this persistent bullying drove our guy mad. There's only so much of that sort of thing he can take, you know. And for Jamar, when he snapped hard. See, apparently aware that his pal's bro was an avid cologne wearer, he came up with a wicked plan of attack. Opening up a fresh bottle of cologne, he opted to, brace yourself, pee inside the bottle. Our guy then sealed the thing up and headed over to his friend's house. After waltzing inside, he revealed his gift, telling his friend's brother that he'd found the thing completely full and didn't need it. Seemed like his lucky day. Jamar was giving it away for free. Overjoyed, the fella snatched the, generous present and immediately began dabbing it all over his wrists and neck. Old Jamar watched on and struggled to contain himself. Then eventually the bully boy stopped and had to ask, what was so funny? Well, breaking into hysterical laughter, Jamar came clean and admitted that it was his pee that he was rubbing on his skin. Sorry, that's so gross. Enraged and disgusted, the guy opened the pee cologne and threw it all over Jamar. Well, come on, man. That one was extreme revenge story that wound up backfiring, right? Well, incredibly, Jamar doesn't think so. In fact, he claims that he wasn't bothered at all about having urine thrown all over him. Yeah, that's right. He said, and I quote, "I didn't care, because it was my pee." Getting covered in someone's bodily fluids is a big no-no to me. It can't get much worse than that, right? Well, let's ask another fan, Mazo Nino. Back in September of 2024, when she was in the 6th grade, she had some bad pork soup and wound up with mega stomach aches. Her lunch had betrayed her, and she was doubled over in pain. The teacher noticed how ill she was and gave her permission to head home early. So our girl with the bad tummy slowly rose and left the classroom, helped along by her cousin and friend. But their journey out of the school was interrupted by a bully. Now, Zoe didn't specify whether they had trouble with said bully before, but given that they had made a beeline for the group, I'm inclined to think so. The thugs started harassing them, slinging every barb they could imagine at the group of pals. It seemed like nothing would discourage them. That is, until Zoe felt a particularly extreme pain in her gut. She knew what was about to happen and what she had to do. She approached the villain, clutching her stomach with a grimace, and then Zoe projectile vomited all over the bully. Talk about making the most of a bad situation. That's definitely one way to get back at a bully. One disgusting, nasty way. Blah. All right, gang. You best buckle up for this one. It's a wild ride courtesy of my fan, Steven. Stephen hails from Scotland, and back in 2012, he moved to Edinburgh with his cat for a fresh start. See, the guy had just finished his nursing degree and gotten out of a toxic relationship. It was definitely time for pastures new. Now, getting a place in Edinburgh can be tough, so he felt as though he'd struck gold when he met Fiona, a lovely woman looking to flat share. Rent was cheap, the flat was a 5-minute walk from his job, and Fiona herself was friendly and welcoming. At least, she was to start with. It quickly became apparent that Fiona was an abusive, promiscuous alcoholic that smoked like a chimney. Married men were in and out of her bedroom as if on a conveyor belt. She drank at least 2 bottles of wine every night, and when she got drunk, she got mean. She'd harass and swear at our hero, threaten both him and his cat, isolate the man in his room, banning any and all visitors for him. Stephen felt trapped. He needed somewhere to live and knew how difficult it could be to find another flat, so he put up with her behavior. He dealt with her drunkenly coming home and accusing him of locking her out. He dealt with her hitting him. With her penchant for breaking into his bedroom. Stephen dealt with it all for a grand total of 3 months, until her antics became too much to handle. One evening, a totally blasted Fiona started to come on to Stephen. She knew full well that he was gay, but still made some pretty forceful advances. Hell, she even tried to get in bed with him. And that night, Stephen knew he had to leave and started his search. Incredibly, the stars aligned and he managed to find a new flat that very night. He was free. Now, for the retribution. On the last day of his packing, Stephen found himself in the bathroom, staring at Fiona's toothbrush. Feeling a sudden flash of impulsivity, the guy grabbed the brush, dropped his pants, and peed all over it. After emptying the tank, he dropped to his knees and began scraping the inside of the toilet bowl with the toothbrush. Stephen vigorously scrubbed to make sure it absorbed plenty of fecal particles before popping it back where he found it. After that, he escaped and moved in with his new roommate, who actually was as nice as she seemed. As for Fiona, Stephen noticed via Facebook that she was struck down with intense diarrhea and vomiting after she left. Looks like she got intimate with her poopy toothbrush. Stellar work, Stephen. Hey, and on that note, I've had it with revenge tales for one day. Which story did you find the most entertaining and the most deserving? Let me know down in the comments down south, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.